Oh, welcome in. Send it in presented by BetMGM here on the BetQL network. A happy Tuesday. Got a great show for you guys today. We continue talking some college football. Today we do a deep dive on Penn State and Notre Dame. Hoping to have Daniel Gallen join us here in a little bit to break down the Orange Bowl, which should be a good one. I'm going to give my thoughts on the Orange Bowl here in a little bit between the Nittany Lions and the Fighting Irish. Also going to look at Wild Card Weekend in the NFL, specifically the 3 NFC games. Going to give out some bets that I have, some leans, some props that I like in some of those games as well. It is a Tuesday. We got a loaded college basketball slate. I'll give out 5 bets that I like tonight in college hoops. Lucy Burdge going to join us for Model Making Money a little later on in the show, and then we'll wrap everything up with our favorite plays of the day. As always, any questions, comments, best bets that you guys have for us, let us know. Go to twitch.tv/BetQL, YouTube/Odyssey Sports. Let us know anything that's on your mind, NFL, college football, college basketball. Send in all your questions, and if you miss any part of the show, over the next 30 minutes, we got you covered with the Send It In podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, classes in session. Let's talk some college football. We got the Orange Bowl on Thursday night, Notre Dame and Penn State. We've seen Notre Dame take a little bit of money this morning. Irish go from being a 1.5-point favorite up to being a 2.5-point favorite. The total in the game is 45.5. Notre Dame minus 140 on the money line. Penn State is plus 115. Now, this game, I think, is an interesting handicap, right? I think the line is probably telling you to bet Penn State for the full game. My problem with Penn State is that in so many of these top 10 matchups, they've been kind of rated like this. You know, they've had some funky spreads in a lot of these games where it feels like Penn State is the right side to take in a bunch of these games, and we know that ends up not being the case. James Franklin, terrible straight up and against the spread in these top 10 collisions. I think the spot, though, for Penn State is really, really good. The Georgia hangover is very much real. You look at the regular season for Georgia, they lost 2 games. They lost to Alabama and they lost to Ole Miss. Bama and Ole Miss in their following games after losing to Georgia, after beating Georgia, both Bama and Ole Miss lost. Bama lost to Vandy and Ole Miss lost to Florida. Georgia, we know, is the premier program right now in college football, right? And obviously these kids are 18, 19, 20 years old. When you beat the team in college football, when you beat the premier program, especially for a team like Bama, that was Kellen DeBoer's first huge win in Tuscaloosa. Lane Kiffin, that was his signature win at Ole Miss. Both of those teams had letdown games in their following games, and I worry about that with Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, right? Notre Dame arguably just won probably their biggest game in the last 30 years in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. So now they have to get ready for a really good Penn State team that does a lot of similar things to what they do. They're good on defense. They stop the run. They got a good running game. And Drew Aller hits them with some explosive plays in the pass game. I'm looking at betting Penn State in the first quarter and the first half. I think Penn State money line, first quarter plus 105. Penn State first half plus a half. I think those are good angles to attack in this game. For what I was mentioning about the Georgia hangover, you look at Bama and Ole Miss in those games. Bama was trailing 13-7 at the end of the first quarter, and then they were trailing 23-14 at halftime. Ole Miss and Florida were tied at 0 at the end of the first quarter, and then they were tied 14-14 at halftime. So I think Penn State could get off to a good start. They were up 28-0 at halftime against SMU, 17-7 at halftime against Boise State. And I think Notre Dame's going to be struggling a little bit. The Georgia hangover is a real thing. We're going to find out a lot about Marcus Freeman as a head coach. How does he get his team to lock back in, focus in, settle in, and get ready for Penn State after having that huge win against Georgia? Notre Dame's also banged up. We know Riley Mills isn't going to be there. Jeremiah Love hurt himself again. Doesn't look like it's a great deal. This is one of those games where I think Riley Leonard is going to have to make some plays in the passing game. He didn't have to really do it against Indiana. Didn't have to really do it against Georgia. I think for Notre Dame to beat Penn State, Riley Leonard's going to have to make some plays through the air. So it's going to be a great game. I like Penn State first quarter, first half. I think attacking that game early, expecting a little bit of a Notre Dame hangover after the win against Georgia, that's the angle that I like in the Orange Bowl. Let's find out what Daniel Gallen likes. He's on site there in Miami getting ready for the Orange Bowl. Make sure you give Daniel a follow on X at DanielJTGallen. Covers Penn State for Lions 24/7 Sports. And Daniel, it's going to be an awesome game on Thursday. You're down there in Miami. Kind of set the scene for us while you're out there and kind of your initial thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, it's great to be out here. I think Penn State has had a really nice draw when you talk about the playoff with going to Phoenix in the Fiesta Bowl and then the Miami area for the Orange Bowl. I saw some of those weather forecasts for the Cotton Bowl, and I think we got the good end of the stick on this one. But on the flight down this morning from Philadelphia, ton of Penn State fans, smattering of Notre Dame fans. I think both of these fan bases are going to have traveled really well, and it's going to make for a good environment at Hard Rock Stadium on Thursday night. I think that when you look at this matchup, PJ, I heard you talking about Riley Leonard. The one thing that I have a vision in my head is him plunging into that Georgia front on those quarterback keepers over and over. And I'm imagining that combined with what we saw that Penn State defensive line due to Ashton Genty last week, just how swarming they were, how aggressive they were, and how determined they were to get him down to the ground. And so I think we're going to see a lot of physical play up front in the trenches. And I think that's where things really start for me when I look at this game.
Daniel, I'm really glad you bring that up because that was going to be my next question. I really liked Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia for everything that you just said. Georgia struggled all year to stop mobile quarterbacks. That's what Riley Leonard has been great at all year, using his legs. I thought if Notre Dame was able to run the ball with the quarterback, they would win. If Georgia was able to stop that, they would lose, and Notre Dame was able to take advantage of that. So when you look at this matchup, what do you think is going to be the big key? Is it really as simple as whatever team's going to be able to run the football? Is it which quarterback is going to be able to make some timely plays through the air? Because the spread is 2.5. We got a low total at 45.5. The game is probably going to be decided, by a couple plays here and there. What do you think's the biggest kind of key in the game?
I'm definitely looking at turnovers. You look at what Notre Dame did to Georgia and how that game just flipped in about, I think it was a minute of game time. Notre Dame's able to score 17 points. You factor in the fumble and then the special teams turnover in there as well, or special teams touchdown in there. And I think that Notre Dame is a defense that likes to take the ball away. Penn State is an offense that doesn't give the ball away too often. The Penn State defense also likes to take the ball away, and Notre Dame doesn't really give it away too often. And so I think that, more so than a lot of games, you're going to see turnovers magnified. It's where they happen on the field, if they happen, what kind of short field you're setting someone up. Is it a pick six? Is it a scoop and score? Something like that. I think that these are the types of games where something on the margins, something fluky, can really determine it. And so I think taking care of the football, there's going to be limited possessions, and the more that you can hold on to it, don't give away possessions, I think that team will have the better chance of winning.
This total, Daniel, is the same as what the Sugar Bowl was between Notre Dame and Georgia. I think a lot of people could see this game playing out similar. Total of 45.5. Maybe it's a low-scoring 20-17 kind of game. I actually tend to think that we might see some points in this game. I'm thinking about possibly taking the over. What are you feeling on this game? Would you lean more so towards the under or the over?
Yeah, when I filed my pick on Lions247.com, I'm way under. I was along those lines. I've 35 points as my total. I don't know if you want my score yet or not, and my prediction there. But yeah, I mean, I do see the possibility of there being points in this game. You talk about what Nick Singleton can do. You saw him break off that 58-yard run late in the Fiesta Bowl. Katron Allen had a 50-yard run called back in the Fiesta Bowl. Drew Aller can air it out when he wants to. Trey Wallace and Omari Evans can hit deep. And we've seen Notre Dame score quickly. Like Jeremiah Love, I know he's banged up, but he had that 98-yard run. I think someone like Bo Collins is a playmaker. So I think that there could be a couple times here where maybe a defense gets caught sleeping and the offense is able to hit a big play, get a quick touchdown. But I think that these are going to be two really well-coached teams that are dialed in, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And maybe you have a nice little front door cover there at the end, and you get a late score to push it over. But I just think that these two teams are so well coached, so ready for this moment that there aren't going to be those sorts of lapses.
You bring up the defenses, and the best player on the field is going to be Abdul Carter. What have you been hearing? Have they been talking about kind of his status for this game?
Are you a Star Wars guy, PJ?
I am not a Star Wars guy.
I'm not really either, but a lot of my colleagues are. And if you go to Abdul Carter's, X and Instagram pages, he's got some Star Wars clips up there that are basically, he is Darth Vader and he is going to be back for this game. That is the mentality that he is putting out there. So I think he'll be out there. In the Fiesta Bowl, it looked like an arm, elbow, shoulder type deal. He was not moving his arm much on the sideline when he was out. We didn't see him at practice during our look on Sunday, and James Franklin has left it open. He said that it depends on how much Abdul can practice and what he's able to do. I don't know if he'll be like a full go or if it'll be a limited type thing. But given what we know about Abdul Carter, like he's a gamer, he wants to be out there. And also what he's putting out there on social media, which is definitely alluding to the fact that he will be out there and he'll be someone to worry about.
On the offensive side of the ball, Daniel, I'm looking at BetMGM right now. We have odds up for anytime touchdown scores. Tyler Warren and both Nick Singleton are favored to score a touchdown at -105. Katron Allen +125. Drew Aller +300. If you had to make a bet on one guy for Penn State to find the end zone in the Orange Bowl, who would you take?
I'd say probably Katron Allen. He is someone where every time he touches the ball, he is trying to score. I know that he doesn't have that same game breaker reputation as Nick Singleton. Like he's not going to run in the 4.3s at the combine, but he is someone who views his role on the football field as I am there to score touchdowns. And that can be from anywhere on the football field. He's been outside of the Ohio State game where he got stood up 3 times in a row. He's been good in those short yardage situations, and I can see them feeding him. He's someone that when he scores, it's a big energy boost to the entire team. He's got his signature celebration where he kicks down the door, and when he does it, the entire offensive line and Drew Aller will do it with him. So I think that he can if he gets into the end zone, it'll give Penn State a lot of juice, and I could see that on Thursday night.
All right, very good. Before we get your pick, Daniel, I just want to know if Penn State ends up winning the game, hypothetically, which matchup do you think would be better for them? Would it be Ohio State because of all the familiarity with the Buckeyes, or would it be Texas just because, as it appears right now, it looks like Ohio State's the best team in the country?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about purely you have one game to play and you want to win, it's probably Texas. I mean, we saw what Ohio State did those first 2 rounds, and that is a team I would not want to face right now. But if you're talking about a win that would be monumental for this program, for James Franklin and everything else, you're definitely talking about Ohio State. Right after that game in November, Penn State players were like, we want them again. We're going to see them again. And at the time, we were kind of like, I don't know about that. But now we're 1 game away. So I think that a lot of people would want to see Ohio State in that game.
Do you think they get that chance, Daniel? What's your prediction? Who do you like in the Orange Bowl, Penn State or Notre Dame?
I do. Like I said earlier, I have a low-scoring game forecasted. I have Penn State 19, Notre Dame 16. I think it's going to be a lot of field goals. I think that it's going to be the type of game that when you're watching it at home or in the stands, the game ends and you feel like you played in it almost, because it will be that physical. It will be that, I think, knockdown, drag out. And I think that with the way that Penn State is playing right now, with their confidence, I think maybe you'll see some gambles from James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki that'll pay off, and it'll put Penn State in a good position to come away with it and get a date in Atlanta in a couple weeks.
Man, should be a fun one. Can't wait for the Orange Bowl on Thursday night. Daniel Gallen joining us. Make sure you give him a follow on X at Daniel JT Gallen. Does a great job covering Penn State for Lions on 24/7 Sports. Daniel, always appreciate the time, man. Have a great time at the game, and we'll catch up again soon.
Appreciate you, PJ. Stay warm.
Yeah, man. Absolutely appreciate it. Jealous of your location out there in Miami. Going to be a great one on Thursday night. All right, let's talk some NFL now, as we got Wild Card Weekend, obviously, this week. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the 3 AFC games. Today, though, we're going to dive in to the 3 NFC matchups. We're going to start with the one in Philly between the Packers and the Eagles. Philadelphia favored by 4.5 with a total of 45.5. It feels like now we've kind of found the middle ground. You know, the Eagles in the look-ahead line when it was Week 18, they were 3-point favorites, got as high at 5.5 at some shops. Now it feels like the consensus is Philadelphia minus 4.5, which I think is the right line. I like Green Bay in the game, plus 4.5. The Christian Watson injury is a big concern because the Eagles have the best secondary in the NFL. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and you want all your wide receiver weapons healthy, especially a guy like Watson with his speed and his ability to take the top off the defense. So other guys are going to have to step up. Jaden Reed, Wicks, Dobbs, Tyler Kraft, the tight end. Going to need, obviously, a monster game out of Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love, who came out of that Bears game, it looked like, with the shoulder injury. He's going to need to obviously play really well, too. Matt LaFleur, in his career, historically very good as an underdog, especially when he's an underdog of 3 or more points. And the big story with the Packers this season, if you take away the Bears game from Week 18, Green Bay this year went 11-0 against teams not named the Lions, the Vikings, and the Eagles. They went 0-5 against those teams. They lost to the Eagles in Brazil in Week 1, and then they lost both of their divisional games against Detroit and Minnesota. However, 4 of those 5 games were decided by 5 points or less. They lost to the Eagles by 5. Both Minnesota games were decided by 2 points. And then one of the Lions games, they lost by 14. Jordan Love threw that pick 6 in the end of the first half, which kind of ended the game. And then that Thursday night game in Detroit, they only lost by 3. So even though Green Bay hasn't been able to beat these top teams in the NFC, they played them very close. And I think this is going to be another very close game. I also like the fact that Green Bay is coming off of 2 losses. They're coming off a bad home performance against the Bears. I kind of think they were just looking ahead to the playoffs. That game was very sloppy. It was very misleading. Chicago hardly did anything in the first quarter, but they got a couple of defensive special teams touchdowns, were able to take the lead, and then hung on at the end for the victory. I think Green Bay is going to have a great game plan. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Philly. And Jalen Hurts, we haven't seen him since he exited against Washington with that concussion. So what's he going to look like? 2 really good running backs in this game with Barkley and Jacobs. Both teams certainly going to lean on them. Kind of like the under 45.5 as well. Just think this is a little too many points. Green Bay showed the ability, even though they haven't won these games against these top NFC teams, they've played them tight. I think they can play Philly tight as well. I'll take the Packers plus 4.5. Then we got Sunday Night Football between the Commanders and the Bucks. Bucks are 3-point favorites. Total is 50.5. Tampa, minus 180 on the money line, and Washington is plus 150. As of now, if I had to pick the game, I'd probably lean towards Tampa, minus 3. Washington's won 4 games in a row, but they very easily could have lost all 4 of those games. The Saints game came down to a failed 2-point conversion. The Eagles game, they would have lost if Devontae Smith dropped the pass. The Cowboys game this past week, they won in the final seconds. And then, of course, the overtime game against Atlanta, they very easily could have lost that game as well. So you got to give Washington credit for winning all those games. At the same time, they could have lost all those games and they wouldn't be in the playoffs. So because they've won 4 in a row and Jaden Daniels going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and everybody kind of loves this Washington team and the way, all the exciting finishes that they've had to a bunch of their games, does feel like they're a little bit overvalued, and I don't think the perception of them right now is like what it should be. I don't think they're really as good as kind of everybody else thinks, and I think Tampa's a little underrated. Bucks are a dangerous team, especially when they're at home. Baker Mayfield's played great football this year, so I like the Bucks minus 3. What I really liked in this game, though, is Jaden Daniels' rushing props. That is what I would look at. After Washington came off their bye week and they won 4 straight games, Jaden Daniels has been really using his legs. He in those 4 games against the Saints, he had 11 carries for 66 yards. Against Philly, he had 9 carries for 81 yards, 16 carries for 127 against Atlanta, and then against Dallas, he sat the second half, really wasn't looking to run. But in those games against the Saints, the Eagles, and the Falcons, Jaden Daniels really used his legs. I like his over rushing yards at over 51.5. I like taking some alts on him as well. 75 plus 275, 100 plus yards at plus 700. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be looking to run quite a bit. I like Tampa, though, in the game, minus 3. And then finally, Vikings and Rams. Minnesota just a 1.5-point favorite on the road against LA. Give me the Rams on the money line, plus 105. I think the Rams are going to win the game. Minnesota, right now, the vibe I get around them is they're like one of those 100-win baseball teams that is in a battle all year with another team in their division. And then they end up losing out on the division race. They get to the wild card series, and then boom, just like that, their season's over. That's kind of the vibe I get with Minnesota. You know, they've had a great regular season. They had a winner-take-all for the number 1 seed in the division in Week 18 against Detroit. They lose that. Now they got to turn around, and they're only 1.5-point favorites against the Rams. The Rams are one of two teams that have beaten them this year. Minnesota's 3 losses, 2 to Detroit and 1 to the Rams. And I think the Rams are a bad matchup for Minnesota. You know, the Vikings pride themselves on creating turnovers and confusing quarterbacks. Stafford's a veteran QB. He's been around the block. He knows what every kind of coverage you can play. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are great against man coverage. And the way to attack Minnesota is to run the football. And the Rams have one of the best running backs in Kyren Williams. He had 97 rushing yards against Minnesota in their first matchup. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously had 4 touchdowns on Sunday. He had 116 rushing yards in their matchup in Minnesota. So that's how you beat this Vikings team and their defense, is you run the football. I think the Rams are going to be able to do that. On the flip side, I know you don't want to overreact to too much, but Sam Darnold got to be a little concerned about what you saw on Sunday night. You know, as great of a year as he has had, that was essentially a playoff game on Sunday night against the Lions. Sam Darnold missed a lot of throws, and he did not look comfortable. He didn't look confident in his decision-making. They missed a ton of opportunities in the red zone. So I think Sam Darnold, I'd be a little concerned about him going in this matchup against LA. I'll take the Rams plus 105 against the Vikings. All right, let's talk some college hoops now on Send It In. Our guy B Mills says, I got Florida money line, UCLA minus 2.5, and Georgia plus 3.5 tonight. College basketball. Peej, do you like any of those looks? B Mills, were on the same length. I got picks in those 3 games and a couple others. We will start with that Tennessee-Florida game. Florida money line, I think, is the way to go. If you like the Gators, I take them on the money line. They're really getting bet today, and now they're out to 3.5. And I think now that they're over the full possession, I would probably stay away. What I've been noticing in college basketball so far, especially these early conference games, is when you get spreads like this where it's kind of a stinky line, right? Number 1, undefeated team on the road, 3.5-point dogs. Those teams have actually been getting off to pretty hot starts, and you get an opportunity to bet a team like Florida live at plus money. That's what I would do right now with the Gators. I just wait, see how the game plays out, and I bet Florida. I like them money line. I like them 1.5, 3.5 though. I don't like Florida as much against Tennessee, so I'd wait, see how the game plays out, maybe get the Gators at plus money to win the game, because I do end up thinking they win the game. Then we got Kentucky and Georgia. B Mills, I'm with you. I like Georgia in this game. Plus 3.5, plus 2.5. I think Georgia's going to win the game outright. Kentucky's only played 1 true road game this season, and it was at Clemson, and they lost that game. Now they're going up against a Georgia team that's pretty solid. Kentucky might be without Kobe Brea, who's the best shooter in college basketball. He does a ton for their offense. And Kentucky's coming off a huge win on Saturday against Florida. Now it's a little bit of a sleepy spot going on the road to Athens. I worry about teams like Kentucky that haven't really played that many road games in the non-conference going in to conference play in their first road game. I'll take Georgia plus the points. Think they win the game outright against Kentucky. Then we got Arizona on the road taking on West Virginia. One of the rare games where you see an unranked favorite on the road taking on an unranked team, right? West Virginia is the ranked team at home as a home underdog against unranked Arizona. Wildcats are playing much better, and this year their defense is actually their calling card. You think of Tommy Lloyd in Arizona, you think up and down, high, fast tempo, offensive juggernaut. That's not them this year. They're a defensive team, and they're starting to get better on offense. West Virginia's had a couple of massive wins this year. They won at Kansas. They beat Gonzaga out in Atlantis. But I think it's a tough matchup for them tonight going up against Arizona. I like the under in the game at 141.5. Arizona's been a good under team because we all perceive them to be this great offensive team. Their defense is actually elite, and their offense isn't very good. I'll take Arizona tonight. On the money line, I think they're a good parlay piece with something else. I like the under, 141.5 as well. I also like the under in Mississippi State and Vandy at 154.5. Now, both of these teams are having good offensive years, but this total should not be this high for a Mississippi State and Vandy game. Vandy has hardly played anybody in the non-conference, and I think a step up in class playing a top 15 team in Mississippi State going to be a little bit of an adjustment for them. And even though the Bulldogs are much improved this year on the offensive side of the floor, their head coach Chris Jans, his calling card is still great defense. So I like the under 154.5 in that game. I think that's too many points. And then finally, Michigan and UCLA. B Mills, I'm going to go on the other side. I'm going to take Michigan in this game, plus 2.5. It's going to be tough, for Michigan to win both games out in L.A. Nice performance against USC, trying to get UCLA, who's looking to bounce back off the loss from Nebraska. This game's going to be low scoring. It's going to be close. I think it's going to come right down to the wire. I'll take the 2.5 with Michigan, possibly win the game outright against UCLA as well. All right, let's go to Model Making Money. Check in with Lucy Burdge. Get some thoughts on today's slate here on Send It. And Lucy, before we get some of your picks and your thoughts, what does the BetQL model, what are some of their 5-star plays?
Yes, hello, PJ. 5-star play for tonight is in the NHL. It is Sharks and Golden Knights, the under of 6.5 in this game. The Golden Knights have hit the under in 3 of their last 4 games. The Sharks have hit the under in their last 4 games and in their last 4 at home. And on the road, the Sharks have gone under this in 4 of their last 6 games. So under 6.5 goals for Sharks and Golden Knights tonight.
All right, very good. Lucy, we had some big news over the weekend. Gerard Mayo got relieved of his duties as Patriots head coach. What was your reaction to that, and who do you think is going to be the next Patriots head coach?
Yes, well, I was not surprised that it happened. I was surprised that it happened so quickly. And then we come to find out that Robert Kraft did his press conference about it yesterday. And I thought Robert Kraft did a good job of getting right to the point. He said, I'm going to get right to it. This is on me. This is my fault that I put Gerard Mayo in a very difficult situation. And he said in that press conference that he has known now for a month or months or so that this would happen. And he was thinking about this for a while. And then I think the win that the Patriots won their final game, and it was a win, but was bad for the team. I think that really sealed the deal for this because Gerard Mayo also did not secure the number 1 pick. So a little ironic, but it wasn't surprising at all. I think there was also a very sharp turn in the way this question, whenever reporters and national media, even Adam Schefter being one of them, were asked about Gerard Mayo's future. Throughout the season, it was, well, Robert Kraft is going to bring him back because it would be embarrassing for him to fire him after 1 year. And then very sharp turn to he probably will not be back next season. And then come to find out right after the game, he was fired. So I was not shocked about this. The shocking thing was how quickly it happened.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. So now what do you think New England does? Because they don't have the number 1 pick anymore. They obviously have their quarterback of the future. What do you think they do with the 4th pick?
Yes, well, I thought initially when they had the number 1 pick, Travis Hunter would be a really good pick, but he might not be available by the time we get to 4. So I think they should take a cornerback. I think they should take Will Johnson. He has great arm strength. They need to solidify their secondary. So I think he could help in that regard. So they could really use some help there with Will Johnson. I think they should take him.
All right, I like it. I think that's a good pick. Going to be interesting to see what the Patriots do. Lucy, before I let you go, we got the playoffs starting in the NFL this week. We got 6 wild card games. What is your favorite play?
So I have 3 favorite plays, PJ. My favorite one, of course, being Ravens -10. That is my favorite that's because we're best friends. That's my favorite, but I also like Eagles -4.5, and I do like the Commanders +3.
Okay, there we go. Ravens, Eagles, Commanders. Love it. Lucy, great stuff as always. Great seeing you. We'll catch up later on in the week. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, PJ. I'll talk to you later.
You got it. For those people who want to continue to bet but don't have the time to research each individual game, you need to download the BetQL app. Ranks each game on a 1 to 5 star scale based on its unbeatable analysis from spreads and over-unders to player props. Stay up to date and bet confidently with BetQL's help. All right, guys, a promo from our friends at BetMGM. You think you know playoff football? Prove it in BetMGM's free-to-play game. For each round of the big game playoffs, you have the opportunity to answer 3 historical playoff football questions. You answer all 3 correctly, you'll win a share of $1 million in bonus bets. First entry period, 3 questions about the wild card games, $250,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. The second entry period, 3 questions about divisional games, $250,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. And the third entry period, 3 questions about the conference championship games with $500,000 in bonus bets up for grabs. Make sure you take advantage of it. How does it work? You access the $1 Million Playoff Football Challenge promotion at BetMGM.com or the BetMGM app. Answer 3 questions per round during the big game playoffs. If you answer all 3 questions correctly, you'll win a share of bonus bets for that playoff round. All right, let's wrap up the show. PJ's plays here on Send It In. We'll start with the prop block. Florida Gators looking to take down the number 1 team in the country tonight. If they do so, it will be because of their star, Walter Clayton Jr., one of my favorite players in college basketball. We'll go over 17.5 points for Clayton. Give me Georgia plus 2.5 against Kentucky as my dog of the day, and Mississippi State Vandy under 154.5 is going to be my best bet. Thanks again to Daniel and Lucy for joining us on the show today. I'm going to be on You Bet or You Bet with Femi coming up a little bit later. Make sure you tune in for that. We will see you guys tomorrow.